After World War II, Berlin was divided into 4 occupation zones controlled by the victorious Allied powers. This worked out well for the French, British, and Americans because their zones were relatively homogeneous. But for the Soviets, their zone contained large pockets of anti-communist East Prussia. So in an effort to solve this problem, and also kick off the start of the Cold War, they decided to block off West Berlin from the rest of West Germany. Let's talk about it. It's me, and this is part 2 of our series on the division of post-war Germany. Now, in our last episode, we talked about how the victorious Allied powers divided up Germany into 4 occupation zones, each with their own capital city. And while this worked out perfectly fine for the French, British and Americans, things were a bit more complicated for the Soviets. You see, while their zone was the largest, contained pockets of East Prussia, with a significant anti-communist population that threatened Soviet interests. To counter this, the Soviets wanted to establish a friendly communist government in East Germany, something the Western Allies would obviously never agree to. So in an attempt to force their hand, the Soviets decided to blockade West Berlin from the rest of West Germany, hoping the Western powers would just give up on their opposition in the face of overwhelming odds. Now, before I continue, I just want to make a quick note that there are many different ways to divide up Germany. Some maps divide it into 3 zones, while others divide it up into 5 or even 6 separate states. For the purposes of this video, though, I'm going to use the most common depiction that divides the country into 4 separate zones. Okay, now back to the video. So on June 1948, the French, British, and American zones were merged together to form the Federal Republic of Germany, with Bonn as its provisional capital. This move was an obvious provocation to the Soviets, who felt that they had been left out of an important decision. On June 24th, in response, they began the Berlin Blockade, cutting off West Berlin from the rest of West Germany, and making it completely dependent on the Western powers for supplies. They hoped that, without the ability to travel freely throughout Germany, the people of West Berlin would eventually force the Western powers to abandon the city. But what the Soviets didn't expect was how the Western powers would respond. Instead of giving up, the US, UK, and France organized the Berlin Airlift with the goal of supplying the people of West Berlin with food, fuel, and other essential goods. The operation involved flying over 278,000 flights into the city, delivering 2.3 million tons of supplies to 2.5 million people. The first challenge for the airlift was getting enough planes to do the job. Initially, only the US was involved with 76 aircraft making around 500 flights per day. But as time went on, more countries like Canada, Denmark, Egypt, France, Greece, India, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, South Africa, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom would contribute planes and personnel to the effort. But even with all these contributions, there was still a severe shortage of pilots. So the US organized a training program to help alleviate this problem. Another challenge was getting enough supplies to keep the people of Berlin fed. Initially, the US military delivered most of the goods, but they soon realized that they didn't have enough trucks to deliver everything. So they turned to the local German people to do the job instead. This wasn't always easy, though, as the Soviets often targeted trucks carrying supplies. Nevertheless, by October 1948, the airlift was able to supply the people of West Berlin with all the food they needed. A third challenge was landing planes in such a congested area. You see, the 4 main airports serving Berlin were located right within the city limits and were surrounded by tall buildings. This made takeoffs and landings difficult, especially since the planes had to fly in and out through Soviet-controlled airspace. To get around this, the Western Allies set up advanced landing strips outside of the city, which helped decrease the number of flights required to deliver the same amount of supplies. The Berlin Blockade and Airlift is considered a pivotal moment in the early stages of the Cold War. Demonstrating the resolve of the Western powers to contain Soviet influence, it also showed the Soviet Union the lengths the West would go to protect their sphere of influence. By May 1949, the Soviet Union realized that they could not force the Western powers out of Berlin, and the blockade ended shortly after the Federal Republic of Germany was officially established. On October 7, 1949,